Moscow's history officially began in 1147. Prince Yuri Dolgoruki of Kiev invited his ally Sviatoslav Olgovich, saying, "Come to me, brother, to Moscow." This marked the first written record of the city. At that time, it was a small settlement on the banks of the Moskva River. Its strategic location at the intersection of trade routes allowed it to grow rapidly. Although archaeological evidence suggests older settlements, 1147 remains the celebrated birth year of the city. In 1156, Yuri Dolgoruki built the first wooden walls to protect the town. This structure was the primitive ancestor of today's massive Kremlin. The city was part of the Vladimir Suzdal Principality back then. Being situated near river trade routes, it flourished economically. However, this advantage also made it a target for raids. While wooden buildings were frequently destroyed by fires, Moscow always rose from the ashes, becoming stronger and more fortified each time it rebuilt. The year 1238 was a catastrophe for Moscow. Mongol armies under Batu Khan invaded Russian lands and besieged the city. It was burned to the ground, and many of its inhabitants were killed. However, this destruction was not the end. Moscow survived by paying tribute to the Golden Horde and skillfully navigating the rivalries between other Russian principalities. This period was a time of patient gathering of strength, while the city waited for its chance to assert dominance. In the late 13th century, Daniel Alexandrovich, son of Alexander Nevsky, founded the Principality of Moscow, turning it into an independent center. Daniel expanded his lands using his father's legacy. Under his rule, Moscow evolved from a small border outpost into a key political actor. The dynasty he established would produce the future Tsars of Russia. The monasteries built during this era ensured that the city became a spiritual center as well as a political powerhouse. Ivan Kalita, known as Moneybags, 1325-1340, made Moscow the richest city in Russia. He gained the trust of the Golden Horde and earned the right to collect taxes. He used this wealth to buy land and rebuild the Kremlin with oak. His most critical move was moving the seat of the Russian Orthodox Church from Vladimir to Moscow. This made the city the heart of Holy Russia. By then, Moscow was the unrivaled leader in both economic and spiritual aspects across the region. In 1380, Prince Dmitry Donskoy of Moscow achieved the first major victory against Mongol-Tatar rule. The success at the Battle of Kulikovo proved Moscow's commitment to uniting Russian lands. Although the Mongols burned the city again after this victory, the psychological advantage had shifted to Moscow. The Russian people began to believe that unity around Moscow would bring independence. Donskoy's heroism played a vital role in forming a Russian national consciousness. Ivan III the Great officially ended Mongol rule in 1480 after the Great Stand on the Ugra River. Moscow no longer paid tribute to any foreign power. Ivan married the Byzantine princess Sophia Paleolog, strengthening the claim that Moscow was the third Rome. The double-headed eagle was adopted during this time. The red brick walls of the Kremlin we see today were built by Italian architects. Moscow was no longer a local principality, but the capital of a vast empire. In 1547, Ivan IV, famously known as Ivan the Terrible, was crowned as the first Tsar of all Russia in a grand ceremony in Moscow. During his reign, Moscow expanded eastward by conquering the Khanats of Kazan and Astrakhan. St. Basil's Cathedral, the iconic symbol of the city, was built on Red Square to commemorate these victories. Despite the terror of the Oprichnina system, Moscow became the absolute fortress of central authority and a feared European capital. At the end of the 16th century, the end of the Rurik dynasty led Moscow into the time of troubles. Famine, civil wars, and Polish occupation brought the city to the brink of collapse. Polish forces even occupied the Kremlin between 1610 and 1612. However, a volunteer army led by Kuzma Minin and Dmitry Pozharsky achieved the impossible by driving the invaders out. This liberation symbolizes Russian unity, and the monument on Red Square honors those who saved the nation. The election of Mikhail Romanov in 1613 marked the start of the Romanov dynasty, which would rule for 3 centuries. Moscow healed its wounds quickly. Trade routes were revived, and new palaces and churches were built within the Kremlin. During this era, Moscow remained the unshakable center of traditional Russian culture and orthodoxy. Foreign experts established the German Quarter nearby, bringing European science, technology, and customs to the heart of Russia. In 1712, Peter the Great moved the capital to his newly built city, St. Petersburg. While this seemed like a loss of prestige for Moscow, the city never lost its status as the old capital and religious heart. Tsars were still crowned in Moscow. It maintained a more traditional Russian spirit compared to the formality of Petersburg. In 1755, Moscow State University was founded. The city shifted from being a center of bureaucracy to becoming the heart of education and culture. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte reached Moscow with his Grande Armée. As the Russians retreated, they left behind a massive fire that destroyed 3/4 of the city. Napoleon entered a hollow, burning city, resulting in a strategic defeat. With winter approaching, the French were forced to retreat. This event cemented the legend of Moscow as the city sacrificed to save the country. Afterward, Moscow was rebuilt in a more planned, grand, neoclassical style for the future. During the second half of the 19th century, Moscow transformed into a massive industrial and railway hub. The St. Petersburg-Moscow line opened in 1851. With the emancipation of the serfs, a huge wave of workers flocked to the city. Textile factories and metallurgical plants changed the skyline. Moscow was no longer just a collection of historical buildings, but a dynamic metropolis with smoking chimneys and a surging population. This rapid growth fueled social unrest. At the start of the 20th century, Moscow became the center of revolutionary movements. Workers built barricades during the 1905 uprising. However, the true change came in 1917. The October Revolution, which started in Petrograd, met with fierce fighting in Moscow. Bolsheviks seized the Kremlin after heavy shelling. In 1918, Lenin moved the government back to Moscow for security reasons. Moscow became the capital of Russia once again, and soon the capital of the entire USSR. In the 1930s, Stalin launched a massive transformation to make Moscow the showcase of socialism. The general plan widened narrow streets, demolished old churches, and opened vast boulevards like Gorky Street. In 1935, the Moscow Metro, the world's most ornate underground system, began service. These palaces for the people were decorated with fine art. The city symbolized Soviet power with its monumental skyscrapers and wide squares, reflecting the era's grand ambitions. In late 1941, Nazi Germany targeted Moscow with Operation Typhoon. German troops reached within 30 kilometers of the city. Stalin remained in the capital and held the November 7th parade in Red Square, sending soldiers directly to the front. Citizens dug tank traps and joined the defense. A counter-offensive led by General Zhukov pushed the Germans back. This victory shattered the myth of Nazi invincibility. Moscow was officially honored with the title Hero City. After the war, Stalin commissioned 7 massive skyscrapers that would forever change the city's silhouette. Known as the Seven Sisters, these buildings housed institutions like Moscow State University and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. During the Cold War, Moscow was the heart of a nuclear superpower. It became the center of scientific research and the space race. It hosted the 1980 Summer Olympics, opening its doors to the world despite the growing systemic crises. In the late 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika restructuring brought change to the streets of Moscow. The first McDonald's opened, signaling the arrival of Western culture. In August 1991, an attempted coup failed when citizens stood in front of tanks. In December 1991, the hammer and sickle flag was lowered from the Kremlin, replaced by the Russian Federation flag. The Soviet Union had ended, and a new era for Russia began. The 1990s were a wild transition period for Moscow. The city struggled with economic crisis and mafia conflicts while rapidly adapting to capitalism. The Boris Yeltsin era was marked by privatization and political turmoil. Yet, amid the chaos, Moscow became a center for luxury shops, nightclubs, and the new rich. The city's appearance changed with neon lights and huge billboards. Moscow was shedding its Soviet identity to become a global financial and cultural center. Since the 2000s, Moscow has become one of the most modern and expensive metropolises in the world. The skyscraper district known as Moscow City has become a new financial symbol. Parks were renovated, digital infrastructure was strengthened, and transport systems were modernized. Today, Moscow is a megacity that blends technology and tradition in the shadow of the Kremlin. Having burned and been rebuilt many times, it remains the unshakable heart of Russia's power.